Good morning, YouTube. Good morning. It is good to see each and every one of you tuning in. Okay, we have some things to talk about. Big earthquake, 8.8 near Russia, right off the coast. One of the biggest earthquakes in the last 120 years. Top 6 earthquake ever in history. Now, we do have tsunami warnings, okay? We were watching last night as, some of these waves were starting to hit, and thank God it wasn't as bad as everybody thought it would be, okay? Now, Hawaii has scaled back their warning, okay? So they're telling people they do not have to evacuate, that they can come back. Okay. Right about now, waves are hitting the coast of California. Japan has scaled back their warning to an advisory. So it looks like we may be getting away with this major earthquake that happened in the ocean and no super bad damage. Now, Russia, of course, has been getting hit with a tsunami that has done damage, tore up infrastructure, things of that nature. So we're going to jump over some live coverage of what is going on.
For 20 years. And I found several similar events near Kamchatka. And I just looked at the tsunami energy pattern because it only depends on the shape of the ocean floor, because the shape of the ocean floor decides where the tsunami goes. And like Professor Tobin said that, the tsunami, speed of the tsunami depends on the depth in the open ocean. And that's why it doesn't matter like what kind of a tsunami is produced. If it's going through the same ocean bottom, it's going to be the same energy pattern if it's coming from the same direction. So you can pretty much look at the previous events that were coming from that area, and you can tell where the propagation will happen, the energy propagation.
Right. And Dr. Troshina, when you see there are reports now from the Russian Pacific coast, the town of Severokurilsk, a wave exceeding 3 meters, the most powerful, we're hearing 5 meters high.
Look at that.
Yeah, so I've read all the Russian reports. In fact, my tsunami advisor from Russia sent me several reports. Fortunately, nobody died because, as Professor Tobin mentioned, it's not a highly populated area, but an interesting event happened at the camp where the Russian Geographical Society was camping, and they were able to leave the area, but everything was washed away. The entire camp was washed away, but nobody died because they were able to escape. Another place, like Severokurilsk, all the people live on the high ground, and like only the cannery and the port was destroyed. Looks like nobody died there either. So fortunately, even though it was a pretty high waves, there were no fatalities in this event, which is great, I think. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And
it's a miracle.
How long you think the alerts should stay in place? How long until the danger could be considered to have passed?
Oh, yeah, the tsunami warning centers have a very specific and strict protocol on when to cancel the tsunami warning. They keep watching the coastal tidal stations. They keep watching observations around the Pacific, and they have that specific number when they say, that's it, we can now cancel the warning. But usually, like for an event like that, it's at every coastal location, it's about 24 hours.
That is Dr. Elena Troshina, who is a tsunami modeler at the Alaska Earthquake Center. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
Okay, as you can see, that water was rolling in, but, not the devastation.
A huge earthquake, one of the strongest recorded in modern history, which has triggered tsunami warnings across large parts of the Pacific. The 8.8 magnitude quake struck off the coast of far eastern Russia, with warnings of aftershocks and waves of up to 5 meters reported there. It also sparked tsunami warnings of varying levels across much of the world. The Russian Pacific coastal town of Severokurilsk in the Kuril Islands was one of the first to be hit. Tsunami waves crashed into buildings. Some were even swept away by the sheer power of the waves. Tsunami warnings are still in place in Japan. In the last hour, the first waves of up to 1 meter above tidal levels have started to hit California. It's unclear if there's been any damage yet, but there are advisories along the California coast for people to stay away from
and
the
we'll
coastline.
see what happened there in just
Reports
a little
now
bit.
of much bigger waves hitting the west coast of the United States, but 3.6 feet at the moment.
Like this happened like unbelievably that there
Well, one of the
wasn't
other
a whole
nations
lot of
closest
destruction.
to the epicenter of that 8.8 magnitude quake, which struck off the coast of Russia, is Japan. Its meteorological agency has now downgraded the tsunami warning level to advisory for Kanto to Wakayama, but
Nothing happened in California. You know, listen, now just because nothing's happened don't mean there won't be some tremors. So usually when there's a big earthquake like that, they'll have smaller earthquakes up to 3 days, 3-4 days after the major earthquake. There'll be small earthquakes or tremors that continue, and some of these tremors
one of the
can
nations
kick up
closest
tsunamis.
to that 8.8 magnitude quake, which has hit just off the coast, the east coast of Russia, is Japan. The meteorological agency there has downgraded the tsunami warning level to advisory for Kanto to Wakayama, but remains at the higher level of warning for parts of Hokkaido and Tohoku. Anawat Saparsi is an associate professor at the International Research Institute of Disaster Science at Tohoku University, and he told us more about what's been happening.
This time is more or less similar to what happened in the past, like 1952, or the tsunami in Chile in 2010. So, like in Japan right now, we also have upgrade from tsunami advisory to warning. So we are expecting tsunami more or less 1 meter, and all over the world, more or less the same. And as you can see in Kamchatka, we can see some tsunami inundation. And this is reflect the size of the earthquake that generate a long period tsunami that can bring the containers or ships like that brought into inland further penetration. And as you might have seen from other information, that tsunami might be last long for a day or two because of the other local bathymetry effect as well.
Okay, so what you're saying is in Japan, certainly they're on high alert for the next 24 to 48 hours because the risk is still in place?
Yeah, I mean, like in 2011, big Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami, or 2010 Chile, tsunami can go back and forth across the Pacific. I think we still have to observe the sea level, but I might expect is that probably at least 1 day or maybe a little bit more, so that the water still will come down.
And presumably, since the 2011 Fukushima tsunami, of course, Japan has increased its alert systems. It's very well placed to deal with this sort of emergency, isn't it?
Yeah, after 2011, the Fukushima accident, we have already installed the sea bottom earthquake and tsunami sensors, 150 sensors in the near to the Japan Trench and other area in the Japan region. So we get tsunami and earthquake observation. And if you remember the New Year earthquake in Noto Peninsula, at that time, tsunami arrived very fast, but people in the west of Japan, they also have a very high tsunami awareness. So most of the people could evacuate very soon after the earthquake. They don't have to wait for the tsunami warning.
That's Anawat Saparsi speaking to Sally Bondoc a little earlier. Yu Koga is a resident of Fujisawa on the southern coast of Japan's Honshu Island. He's been telling me about the situation there.
So I woke up this morning around 7 a.m. I was working laptop, and I saw an alert on my phone saying that there was a big earthquake in Russia. And at first I thought it was just a regular earthquake, just something imagined. But then I heard an alert going on around my area, and then I realized I had to evacuate. So I took shelter at a nearby shopping center.
Right. So you decided to take action. Was that before you were being told to leave coastal areas and stay away from places that were not inland?
It was.
Even in California, they're telling people to stay away from the coastline.
How frequently are you, as a resident there in Fujisawa, getting these sorts of alerts, and how different did this one feel?
It's quite rare to be told to evacuate. I've been living here for around 5 years now, but I think it's my first time having to evacuate.
Right, and your home is about 1 kilometer from the sea?
Yep, that's right.
What were other people doing when you were taking shelter in the shopping center? Was everybody taking the same evasive action?
Good morning, guys.
Not quite. People were, some people chose to evacuate by cars. So there was a huge traffic on the main road. And some people tried to reach the train, but the train was stopped. So there was no chance people could get anywhere by train. So yeah, I think people were really confused about how to evacuate. Yeah. Right.
So the trains were stopped, but people were still being told to move inland.
Yes, they were, but they were not that the train was stopped. So they just had to go to the station and check.
And it's what, 3:45 in the afternoon there in Fujisawa. Has everything stopped? All normal life stopped for the moment? What are people doing? What are offices doing? Are businesses closed?
It looks like it's just back to normal, I guess, but there's still an alert going on around the area. And so far, I haven't seen any signs of tsunami at the beach close by too, so it's pretty normal.
Right, so there's no clear sign of any waters receding or any higher waves for now?
For now, yep.
And have the authorities said how long you may have to stay there?
No, not quite. I don't know when the alert is going to be done, so they have to say.
That's Yukoga speaking to me a while ago from southern Honshu in Japan, and the meteorological agency in Japan has now downgraded rather, the tsunami warning level to advisory for coastlines from Kanto to Wakayama, but it does remain at the higher level of warning for parts of Hokkaido and Tohoku. But in Hawaii, the warning has been downgraded to an advisory, and the major threat has passed.
Which is good news on that, because you know we were covering Hawaii last night. There was some flooding. Water did come up in one of the harbors.
A huge earthquake, one of the strongest
but
recorded in
terrible.
modern history, which has triggered tsunami warnings across large parts of the Pacific. The 8.8 magnitude quake struck off the coast of far eastern Russia, with warnings of aftershocks and waves of up to 5 meters reported there. It also sparked tsunami warnings of varying levels across much of the world. The Russian Pacific coastal town of Severokurilsk in the Kuril Islands was one of the first to be hit. Tsunami waves crashed into buildings. Some were even swept away by the sheer power of the waves. Tsunami warnings are still in place in Japan. In the last hour, the first waves of up to 1 meter above tidal levels have started to hit California. It's unclear if there's been any damage yet, but there are advisories along the California coast for people to stay away from the coastline. Reports now of much bigger waves.
I think California will be okay.
United States, but 3.6 feet at the moment. The figure that we are
Some
hearing.
places
now, Rachel
it's still
Burrows
going
is on
on
a cruise ship off the coast of Hawaii. She was on a tour when the emergency warnings came through.
We were on a tour around the volcanic area of the Big Island, it's called, that we're on in Hawaii. And towards the end of the tour, as we were luckily heading back towards the cruise ship, we started getting the emergency warnings, that sign on your phone. So the first one was tsunami, you're in immediate danger, you need to move away from the coast and get to higher ground. And then the tour guide, who was local, just kind of said, oh, it won't, we always get these, it won't be anything. But then we started getting more through saying like more times of when they thought the tsunami would hit. So then we started making our way back. He was going to stop at a factory, a chocolate factory that's famous on the island. And then as we pulled up to that, the traffic was getting really bad. And he was like, this is really unusual. And it's because everybody was beginning to evacuate. And then as we pulled up to the
looks
factory,
pretty calm.
The shop owner was like, no, you need to go. We're closing, you need to go. So then he brought us back to the cruise ship. But it was quite scary because all the sirens then started going off around the area because it was obviously quite serious. And then we got off the tour bus, and then everyone was just running, trying to get on the ship because they were closing the ship off because we needed to get out to sea. So we were luckily one of the last ones that got back onto the cruise ship, and then we could see a lot of other people like getting dropped off and just lining up, but they didn't make it. They were then told to get up to higher ground on shore. So it was quite scary. We've kind of gone like up a little bit and then into deep water, and the captain just reassured us that we'll be in a safe position there out at sea. Like the deeper you go, the safer you're going to be, because obviously for us, we don't know anything about tsunamis. We're from the UK, so we're thinking, do we get on a ship or do we go to higher ground? So he reassured us that we're in a safe place, and then we just now have to wait until we're directed by like the transportation.
Yeah, I wouldn't get on a ship.
Transportation to tell us when it's safe to redock. So it's just a waiting game for us now.
They're not out of danger yet. But yeah, I think it sounds like in Hawaii, it really just has generated a tsunami that's not going to present a major hazard. The thing about a tsunami crossing the entire Pacific Ocean basin, literally more than a quarter of the planet, is that the wave energy can actually sort of be concentrated in some areas and more dissipated in others. So the fact that it's not so bad in Hawaii doesn't mean that it might not focus in some other area, and we see more damage or a more significant wave.
The surfers will be out today.
South America, for example, but signs are pretty good all around that this earthquake just didn't generate as large a tsunami as it may have.
And that's a miracle, to be honest. Thank God it didn't get as big as it could have got. A lot of people could have died. And right now we got no fatalities, not that we know of, unless we have some in Russia. But I think everybody got out in Russia too. They had time. So right now, all I know globally, there's no deaths reported that I know of at this moment. And of course, Russia was hit the hardest because that's where the earthquake was. Waves you got a little bit of flooding in parts of Hawaii. And we really don't know if there's going to be any surges in California until, it's 7 a.m. here on the East Coast. California's 3 hours back, I believe. So it is still 4 a.m. in California. Well, it's either 3 or 4 a.m. in California. So we'll see if there was any tidal flooding or anything like that may have took place.
The strongest recorded in modern history has triggered tsunami warnings across large parts of the Pacific. The 8.8 magnitude quake struck off the coast of far eastern Russia. There are warnings of aftershocks and waves of up to 4 meters reported there. It also sparked tsunami warnings of varying levels across much of the world. The highest warning levels were in place in Hawaii and also across most of Japan. They have now been downgraded. There have also been alerts and warnings of differing levels across the Pacific. Alaska, the west coast of America, Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, Indonesia, the Philippines, Guam, the Galapagos, Micronesia, Taiwan, even New Zealand. Many have now been downgraded. Well, let's have a look at how the situation unfolded. The earthquake struck off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula at 1:27 p.m. local time.
The TV.
2:30 in the morning here in the UK. People in the region immediately began sharing videos of themselves as their buildings shook. The region's governor called for people to remain calm. The earthquake, one of the most powerful ever recorded, caused some building damage in Kamchatka, but there have been no reports of anyone being killed, and no one was in this kindergarten you can see here at the time of the quake. Within hours, the tsunami began rolling in the nearby Sakhalin region. Houses on the coastline were flooded. Buildings across the coast were swamped by the incoming tide. And across the Pacific, people began receiving alerts on their mobile phones, urging them to get to higher ground, including this one live on BBC News.
I would say that a lot of the people that, sorry, we have a siren going off now.
Well, as the tsunami warning spread, people in Japan, where memories of the 2011 Fukushima earthquake and tsunami are still fresh, were seen taking shelter on the top of buildings, away from the threat of any wave.
Okay. We lost them. We have a little bit of bad reception going on here. We should be back in just a moment.
Almost 2 million people were under evacuation orders. Japan now has downgraded its tsunami alerts for much of the country.
It's just about over.
People were caught up in the traffic as they tried to obey directives to get to higher ground. The warning there has also been downgraded to an alert. Some people have been told they can head home. Places to have been impacted. Waves of up to 1 meter above tidal levels have also been reported in Northern California. That's in the last few hours. But no major damage has been reported. Well, the area affected by the tsunami across Japan is absolutely vast. We are currently at the mid-level of the country's alert system. Our Japan correspondent Shaima Khalil says waves could hit suddenly as high as 3 meters.
Dozens of waves have hit Japan's Pacific coast. And the reason why so many people have been affected by the evacuation order, nearly 2 million people, as you've mentioned, is because it covers a huge area of that coast from Hokkaido in the northeast to Wakayama in the southwest. So a big area really where we've seen train lines in that coastal area have stopped. We've seen a Sendai airport, a coastal airport that has been closed, grounding 21 planes, affecting 2,000 people. But mainly the main advice still remains, which is even if we have these waves that have hit the coastal as high as 1.3 meters, as you say, they could go as high as to 3 meters and they could hit suddenly. That's the message from the meteorological agency as they try to continue to assess how high these waves are, how hard they're going to hit, and which areas as well.
That's the situation in Japan. Let's speak now to Kim Hutchinson, a data scientist at the National Tsunami Warning Center in Alaska. Kim, good to see you. A huge amount of data, I'm sure, coming into you at the moment. Can you just give us an update of where we're at this very moment when it comes to the tsunami across the Pacific?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me. Currently, we are seeing water levels hitting the United States West Coast, so Alaska, Oregon, California. And we're seeing them mostly in the level between 0.3 meters to 1 meter. And that's what we call an advisory here. So that's when we worry about coastlines. And
so not a warning, but an advisory.
Damage, but we're not necessarily worried about the tsunami flooding onto shore.
So what's your advice to people in those areas, Kim?
Stay away from the beaches. Today's not the day to go suntanning. And stay away from the harbors. Tsunamis can last a long time, and this one is still hitting.
Is there a concern about aftershocks, Kim?
That's what I was saying.
Aftershocks are a common part of earthquakes. This was a really large earthquake, though. All I can say is we're here, we're prepared, we're a 24-hour center, and if it happens, we'll be ready.
Can you explain to us what actually happened after the earthquake with the Pacific Ocean? What effect did it have?
Yeah, so you can think of the ocean almost like water in a bathtub. Imagine you slip your hand to the bottom of that bathtub and push it up really suddenly. That water is going to move in all directions and it's going to start sloshing over the sides. And it's not just one wave, it's a series of waves. And often the first one is not the largest. So that's what happened to our ocean. And our ocean is many kilometers. So that much water being displaced is really powerful and really damaging.
It's a huge amount of water, Kim. What is the impact potentially of this in terms of the coming hours and the coming days?
For now, we are pretty lucky, and in the United States West Coast, we are looking at mostly less than 1 meter of water, which again means damages to coastlines and harbors, but luckily not much inundation on land. The only part that we still have in a warning, which is potentially over 1 meter of water, where we do start worrying about water flooding onto land, is a small portion of Northern California. And we're hoping that as we get more water data, we can start to downgrade.
Yeah, Kim, I did hear a few hours ago, though, that there are concerns that this can sometimes last a couple of days. That was a real concern in Japan as well. Has that gone away, that worry?
No, this is an event that can last many more hours.
Yeah,
and possibly
so
days as well?
Even though it's calm now, it could get
Potentially,
worse.
it's really hard to say at this point. Hopefully not.
And what about the advisory warning systems, Kim? Have they all been quite successful? Are people happy with how the alerts have gone out this time?
I hope so. To be honest, we're still getting inundated with earthquake information, water information. We're doing all the science, and that's what we're working off of. I can only hope that it went smoothly for the American public.
And where does all your data come from?
Most of it comes from coastal tide gauges that is run by the National Data Buoy Center here from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the United States. We also have things called DARTs, which are out in the deep ocean that are incredible tools to help us detect tsunamis. And that DART stands for Deep Ocean Assessment and Recording of Tsunamis. And we use those in this event, multiple ones, to help us downgrade and determine what the level of danger was to the United States West Coast.
There have been 30 aftershocks in Russia.
Kim, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for explaining that also clearly to us. I can bring you an update that we've just been receiving from Russian authorities, actually. We know that this earthquake struck the Kamchatka Peninsula, I was telling you earlier, at about 1:27 p.m. local time. We have some pictures for
Earthquakes
you
are scary.
from that region of Russia. We are just hearing from the authorities that they have lifted their tsunami warning for the Far East Kamchatka region as well. So the earthquake had this initial damage that we're seeing, some building damage there. No one killed though, luckily, and there were some houses that were flooded. But the actual tsunami warning for this region has now been lifted, we understand.
So it's just an advisory in Hawaii, just an advisory in California. Most of Japan is just an advisory. So is it too early to say that we're in the clear? I don't know, right? Because, you know, there's the chances of aftershocks and other waves still coming in. But it looks like, I don't want to jinx it, that we may have got away with one of the biggest earthquakes in the last 100 years at least, and no deaths. That is a miracle. And especially from the earthquake itself, you know, no real major collapses that killed anybody. And, you know, far as the tsunamis that follow these earthquakes, especially when these earthquakes happen in the ocean, for nobody to be killed or very little property damage other than the coastline, it's almost unbelievable, right? We were expecting this to be really, really bad last night. We were expecting the worst, that places were going to get completely flooded, people were going to be displaced, homes were going to be destroyed, and
2 million people have been
a miracle happened
in Japan after one of the most powerful earthquakes this
Thanks,
century
Faye.
off
Have
the
an early
Pacific
shift in the
coast
morning.
of Russia, which has
You
triggered
too.
tsunami warnings. People
Aussie
have
girl.
been heading to safety in other places all around the Pacific. We've been looking at Hawaii, New Zealand, the Philippines, even as far away as Peru. Let's speak to our climate and science reporter, Esme Stallard. Esme, this is a huge earthquake. What do we know about it?
Yeah, according to the US Geological Survey, which monitors earthquakes worldwide, it's saying this is potentially the 6th largest recorded in history. Now,
be
the
safe,
region where this
Aussie girl.
earthquake occurred is no stranger to
Cat.
earthquakes. It's along something we call the Pacific Rim of Fire, which is where there are a series of tectonic plates boundaries which are constantly moving in relation to each other. And in fact, 80% of earthquakes worldwide occur along this area. Now, at this time, we're still gathering information about what caused it, but what geologists are saying to us is that they suspect it's being caused by the subduction of the Pacific plate beneath part of the North American plate, and what that's done, that movement has been released, and that potentially is propagating energy out, and that's why there's this tsunami risk in place for countries that are nearby to where the earthquake occurred.
Right, and you talk about energy. The amount of energy released by an earthquake of this magnitude is absolutely huge, and an ocean the size of the Pacific, the whole of it, can potentially be affected.
Exactly. So what's important when we look at where an earthquake occurred is also at what depth it occurred. This was a very shallow earthquake. So earthquakes can occur hundreds of kilometers below the surface. This one was just 20 kilometers down. And crucially, it was, as you say, beneath the ocean. So when you get sudden movement, we think this is something called a megathrust, where there is this subduction of one plate below another. Energy has been released. And what happens is that energy will propagate out across the ocean. Now, if you're, I don't know, a fisherman sitting on the sea, you might not actually even notice much. The movement of the water just pushing up a little bit will be quite small. But the problem happens is that as that wave approaches land and it becomes shallower, the energy sort of backs up and the wave begins to grow. And that's where you can get tsunami risk. And as you say, there are tsunami warnings for countries many hundreds of kilometers away. We've got the tsunami warning in place for Hawaii, for Japan, Guam, and lesser tsunami advisories in place also for the west coast of the US.
Let's get the latest from another part of the Pacific, Japan now. Almost 2 million people have been told to evacuate. A tsunami wave of 1.3 meters is reported to have reached the northern Iwate prefecture. That's according to the country's weather agency. Our Japan correspondent Shaima Khalil can talk to us now. Shaima, just tell us the latest on those warnings.
That's right. The warning still is in place here, the tsunami warning, and that's the mid-level warning that we've had after it was upgraded very early in the day. Today it was an advisory first, then it was upgraded to a warning, and that has sustained up until now. Dozens of waves have hit Japan's Pacific coast. And the reason why so many people have been affected by the evacuation order, nearly 2 million people, as you've mentioned, is because it covers a huge area of that coast from Hokkaido in the northeast to Wakayama in the southwest. So a big area really where we've seen train lines in that coastal area have stopped. We've seen a Sendai airport, a coastal airport that has been closed, grounding 21 planes, affecting 2,000 people. But mainly the main advice still remains, which is even if we have these waves that have hit the coastal as high as 1.3 meters, as you say, they could go as high as to 3 meters and they could hit suddenly. That's the message from the meteorological agency as they try to continue to assess how high these waves are, how hard they're going to hit, and which areas as well.
Shaima, what is happening at the Fukushima nuclear plant, which experienced such terrible tsunami in 2011?
That's right. Look, people in Japan are quite used to getting tsunami alerts and earthquake alerts. You know, we get them on the phones quite regularly, but I think a tsunami warning like this, given how huge the earthquake was in the Pacific coast of Russia, and given the how shallow it is, the risk of aftershocks, people are generally nervous. But I would say that any tsunami alert or warning that includes the Fukushima area, which this one does, triggers a heightened sense of concern because of what happened in 2011, that triple disaster, including the nuclear meltdown.
Okay, guys, we're going to change up a little bit because I forgot all about this, and I definitely want to see this. We are going to be covering the funeral of Ozzy Osbourne, okay? And I'll cut that beginning out later. And miracles happen. We didn't get caught up with the storm. So let's say goodbye to the Prince of Darkness together today. Let's cut that down a little bit. And look how many people have showed up for the funeral of Ozzy Osbourne. Let me close this. People are starting early for this funeral. Thank you, Dolly, for airing this. Well, we can always get back to the storm if anything changes or develops. But right now, I figure, hey, let's pay our respect to good old Ozzy Osbourne for all the good years he gave us. Let me go in and change a couple things on the stream. Let me see. Let me go over here to YouTube Studios. Content. Let's get to the live. Let's go ahead and close that out. Let me copy this. What a sad situation, you know, when you lose the Prince of Darkness. Let me finish tagging this, guys. All right, let me save this. Copy that. I mean, I knew this would be one of the biggest funerals ever because Ozzy was really loved by a lot of people. Even if he wasn't like a big metal fan, a lot of people just really loved Ozzy and Sharon. And I mean, his show, I think that's where a lot of people, a lot of the fans came from, was his show when he did the show. Good morning. Thanks for sharing. Rest in peace. Yes. Ozzy forever. You know, he may be gone, but his music will live on forever, which we can only dream of doing something like that in this world, leaving something behind that will last forever. Crazy Train is your favorite song? Yeah, he was so real. I mean, he battled his demons and alcohol and drug problems. And, you know, to see it all end, and, you know, he lived a long time for the type of life he led, for sure. And look, the streets are lined. So they're going to do his funeral procession, and I'm sure they're going to speak. Yeah, I'm glad he's not suffering either. That Parkinson's was tearing him apart. So, Home of Metal, Ozzy Osbourne, Prince of Darkness. You know, was he really that dark? No, I think a lot of it was show. I don't think Ozzy was quite as evil as people made him out to be. And I hope he makes his way to heaven. I mean, heaven would be a lot cooler with Ozzy there. You got to have the same operation as Ozzy. Well, we wish you luck. Okay, we went down. That's not good. We're having some technical problems. Here we go. We're back. Let me go see if I can cut the first part. Well, I don't need to do all that. Look at all them flowers. Yes, definitely rest in peace to Ozzy Osbourne. For Kelly and Jack, Sharon, prayers to his family. And you see all the big signs, Ozzy forever. There's a big one up there too. And they got, look, the black hearts and the bats. Now, I'm not sure exactly what time this will be happening, but a bunch of people asked me would I cover it. And, you know, I grew up on metal, Metallica, Ozzy, Slayer, stuff like that. And I knew this day would one day come, and I just wasn't ready for it. Well, yeah, I don't know all 6 of his kids. I just know I just know the ones with Sharon. So it's supposed to start in about 30 minutes. Okay. Well, we're here for it. Nope, nothing much was going on with the tsunamis, right? So we might as well jump over and cover the Ozzy stuff. Yeah, I'm going to be here till after this, and then I'm going to take a nap. Yeah, I slept a long time yesterday. I slept most of the day, and I'm going to bed to crash out to a little after lunchtime here in just a little bit. Probably windy. When you Google it, it says, "Thank you for the mayhem, Prince of Darkness." That's what Google says. And it has the horns. That's cool. Google paying homage to Ozzy. You know you're famous then. No problem, Lady Justice. So this should start off around 8 o'clock, most likely, the funeral procession. OG Nanny. Thank you, Rose. Today we all ride the crazy train. All aboard. Yes, usually it's the Blessed Express here on Dolly, but today you're riding the crazy train, okay? All aboard. We're going off the rails on the crazy train. Dolly, you rock. Thank you, Running Bear. Where is this? This is in England, right? You've always been on a crazy train. The singer from Iron Maiden passed away too? What's his name? Something Dickerson. Is it Brian Dickerson? Oh, I think that was the original singer of Iron Maiden died. Paul Day died at 69. He was the original singer of Iron Maiden. But he ain't the most famous one from Iron Maiden. Bruce Dickerson is the singer that everybody knows. And he's still alive. But it was Paul Day. Paul Mario Day. He died at age of 69. That was just posted 3 hours ago. So rest in peace to the original singer Iron Maiden. Okay. You've been a fan since the 70s. Awesome. I've seen Ozzy a few times in concert. I went and seen Ozzy alone at the No More Tours tour. I've seen Ozzy like 5 or 6 different times at Ozfest. So I've seen Ozzy a bunch. I seen him when he had energy still, and he would run around the stage and jump around like a frog. Ozzy, Ozzy, Ozzy! What a sad situation. Choo choo, crazy train. You saw him in 1975. You're in tears. Well, just think, he was in a lot of pain and he was suffering, and he had a lot of good years. He lived a life most people could only dream of living. He's loved by millions of people. I mean, it don't get much better life than that. No more sunshine. I'm trying to remember the words. As the war machine keeps on turning. Oh, Lord, yeah. He didn't want to sad. He said, rock on. Look, she got the bat.
I can say I'm fortunate enough to be joined now by Birmingham's Lord Mayor, who is somebody that you have been fortunate enough to encounter, Ozzy, a number of times, haven't you, particularly this year?
I have. In the last 2 weeks before the concert, we gave him the freedom of the city. And Ozzy came to my office, so down-to-earth guy, working class hero, I think. Never forgot his roots. Always talked about Birmingham wherever he went, promoted Birmingham all through his life. And his slogan was Birmingham forever. And, you know, we are proud of that. We are a proud city to have him here today. And I'm really grateful to Sharon Osbourne and the family for allowing this to happen today.
The family are paying for all this as well.
The family have paid for all this, and the city, and we have worked with the family. But what a great honor for us to have him here for one last time, to visit, you know, look at the fans. I mean, I came here in the morning at 7 o'clock. There were people queuing up then. Now, from the council house all the way to the end of Broad Street, which is a mile, Golden Mile, we call this the Golden Mile, and you can see thousands and thousands of people, and the love for Ozzy. I mean, you can feel it, can't you? You can feel it in the air. And, you know, we are so grateful to the Osbourne family for allowing this to happen. And, you know, we want to honor the working class hero. He put Aston on the map. He was born in Aston. He put Birmingham on the map, rock legend. But saying all that, he was a human being who can touch the ordinary people.
Can I ask that? Because we were chatting off camera as well. You said he wrote you a letter after giving you the keys. That's amazing. What was in the letter?
He wrote, because I suffer from ADHD, and he read my biography. He took the time out to read my biography and wrote a letter to me. And he said, well, you know, I can understand, you know, how you feel. And he said, exactly, that's the same thing happened to him at school.
He was dyslexic. He had quite a troubled childhood for people that won't know.
I put the letter in a frame and it's in my office. And I shall treasure that, you know, till my last days. But, you know, what a down-to-earth guy who took the time out to read somebody's biography.
He's saying Ozzy's a good guy, basically.
But he took the time and he wrote me a letter. And, you know, he was just a natural human being, you know, down to earth. You wouldn't have thought he was a rock star and, you know, a legend. But, you know, he's a true legend. And we are very grateful that, you know, his family is bringing him here today. And we want to welcome him. And, you know, you can see the crowd. Thousands of people have lined up the streets since 7 o'clock this morning.
How will he be remembered by this city?
Well, I think he will be remembered as a true legend who never forgot his grassroots, where he came from, promoted the city all his life, all his life he promoted Birmingham forever. So he will be remembered fondly, lovingly, and you can see from the crowds,
You absolutely can. Have you been talking?
You can't understand a word.
I've stood in the condolences book in the queue, and I've met people from all over the world. And people were standing behind me. There was a lady standing, and she said,
"Thank
she
you, Shelley."
Came only because her brother is terminally ill, and she wanted to sign the book. See, that's what you call true love. And he was, he was loved by the whole of Birmingham. I think you can't, you can see it. You can see it, man. I mean, thousands of people lining the streets since 7 o'clock this morning, and there's thousands of people more coming. And I'm sure we will give him a great send off.
He genuinely did touch the hearts of so many people, didn't he, as well? I've seen grown men already in tears.
And you
today.
can see, from every nationality, there's people here. Yeah. Every nationality, every color. There's young people, there's old people, there's every kind of people. It just touched everything. And, I just can't put it into words, the love for him in this city. And we do love him. And, we're going to give him a great send-off today.
This isn't a funeral procession.
No.
This is his last tour of the city.
This is the last tour of his city, the city that he loved and the city we love, great city. And I'm really glad that, they've decided to do this today. And they've taken up all the expenses, which is, great of the family to do that. This is the stature of the family, I think, that, the love they showed and Ozzy showed. And, this is embedded in him. And the last final tour will be today.
It really was the sound came from the industrial heritage here as well. No one else sort of.
Nobody thought about it, and he thought about it.
Mama, I'm coming home.
He only put the heavy metal on the map. He put Aston on the map. He put Birmingham on the map. He put the Birmingham people on the map. So how wonderful is that for somebody? You could have gone to America and stayed there.
Remember the Lita Ford song, "Close My Eyes Forever"?
Thousands of people. And the city loves him, from the bottom of the heart. And I'm really honored as a Lord Mayor to be standing here. And, I'll be, waiting here when the procession comes.
Thank you so much for talking to us. Look, we'll just leave you, Gareth, with a shot, shall we? Just quickly, Matt, if you can swing the camera around. You can see.
Thank you, Lady for Justice. Welcome to the crazy train today. We're all riding on the crazy train.
To the people of Birmingham and beyond. Want to be here to show the support.
I think that panning of that camera has just tested the cable of the microphone there. A slight touch, but that is the scene live in Birmingham, as Katie's saying. People as far as the eye can see gathering together to commemorate the life and celebrate the life of Ozzy Osbourne. We'll bring you more from Birmingham through the course of this afternoon. 12:45 still to come. We've been to the suit.
Give us away! Mayor, give us away!
Yeah, Michael Jackson had a lot of fans show up too. I rank Ozzy right up there with Michael Jackson, just a different music. I think Ozzy was the king of like metal, and Michael Jackson was the king of pop. Yeah, I'm glad he's getting a good send off too. No. Just like in the words of Ozzy, no rest for the wicked. Okay. That's what Ozzy said. No rest for the wicked. I'll rest when I'm dead. Okay. No, I didn't get any sleep. I'm here with you guys this morning. I'm going to bed shortly after this, though. But in the words of Ozzy, paying homage, no rest for the wicked. Shot in the dark. All right, let's cut that down just a hair. Let me see something real fast. Okay, if y'all are just tuning in, make sure you like this video. We got a little sidetrack. We were covering the tsunami, and then the Ozzy stuff kicked off, so we figured we would jump over, cover Ozzy Osbourne, because we got all day to cover the tsunami, but you know, we only get one Ozzy funeral, so we're here for it. So let me see something. Oh, I know what I wanted to do. Content. Okay. I was seeing how many views were done last night on that tsunami video. Thank you guys for everybody that watched it. All right, we only got 388 likes on this video. Give Ozzy Osbourne, if you're in the room, pay your respects. Give that man a like. We should have 436 likes on that video because that's how many people are in this room. So pleased you're covering Ozzy's last journey. I wouldn't want to miss this, guys. I'm glad I came across it because somebody came in last night and said, Dolly, are you covering it? And I was like, well, send me the link. And I don't know if they ever sent me the link, but I seen it on YouTube and I was like, hey, we're gonna watch this together. We're gonna be a part of this funeral. Ozzy played a big role in a lot of people's lives. I remember when I used to kick Ozzy on, I was probably, I don't know, 16. I was trying to learn how to play the drums, and I would always play to a lot of Ozzy stuff. And No More Tears was probably like my favorite Ozzy song. Mama, I'm Coming Home. You know, Bark at the Moon. Ozzy had so many good songs. So I think the procession starts at 8 is what people are saying. Look at that haircut. Iron Man. Yeah, that was a good one. Diary of a Man. dreamer. I mean, look, it's from old people to young people. You know, he had fans, teenagers till to this day rock with Ozzy. It ain't just old people that like Ozzy. Even the young kids still like Ozzy. Ozzy pretty much stayed with the times or whatever was going on at the time in music. He always had the best bands, right? Like I ain't talking about Black Sabbath, but I'm talking about just Ozzy's band. You know, you had Randy Rhoads, you had Zakk Wylde. He even at the end he had Jason Newsted from Metallica playing with him. So he always surrounded himself with the best musical people he could. You started playing Ozzy. Awesome. Well, you know, like I said, a lot of his stuff was for show. He's a human being. He was a family man. He battled his demons just like all of us have demons that we have to battle. He just had bigger demons, right? But, you know, I don't want to see Ozzy suffer. It was sad to see him in that chair at the last concert. I'm glad he did it. I'm glad he got to say goodbye to everybody. And I think he held on to do that. I think he fought this all the way up until after that concert so he could say goodbye to everybody. That's how important his fans were to him. He just wanted to rock. You know, that is awesome. And even at his age to be able to do it and do it at the level that he was doing it, it's amazing. Oi, oi, oi. You're glad he got to meet his grandbabies before he left? And he got to watch Kelly get engaged. You know.
Ozzy Osbourne fans preparing for a procession that's going to take place through his home city. Ozzy died at the age of 76 last Tuesday, and a hearse is going to carry his body down Broad Street to Black Sabbath Bench and the bridge. That's going to happen in the next 5-10 minutes or so. The family
Awesome.
members will watch that cortege. It's going to be accompanied by a live brass band, and we've seen numerous floral tributes piling up near the Black Sabbath Bridge in memory of Ozzy. There they are on the left-hand side of your screen. And there's also a book of condolences, actually. It's opened at Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery. It's currently holding an exhibition titled Ozzy Osbourne, Working Class Hero. Plenty more to come with James after the break.
Okay. So, let me mute that for a second. And his procession should kick off in 5 or 10 minutes or so. And yeah, Ozzy brought a lot of great things to the world. I know my description still says 8.8 earthquake near Russia. And as soon as this procession's over, we will get back to talking about that. I'll change the thumbnail back up and the title. I changed the title to Ozzy's funeral, right? Because I don't want people clicking on it and they thinking they're going to see about the tsunami and we're talking about Ozzy Osbourne. But as soon as we're done with the procession, we will click back over to, I will change the thumbnail back and the title back to the tsunami, and we'll get updates on Ozzy and Randy Rhoads in heaven, right? Playing Crazy Train in the Sky. Kicking it with Dimebag Darrell. I mean, It's sad, but listen, guys, we're all going to meet this day one day. We're only guaranteed one thing in this life, and that's we're all going to die. Some of us sooner than others, but we're all going to have the same end. We start the same and we end the same. And it's what you do here on this planet and what you leave behind. You want me to tell you how you live forever? I'll tell you. Does anybody know how you live forever? Dolly knows the secret for living forever, and I'll tell it to you. I'll tell you. You know how you live forever? Anybody? Anybody want to guess? It ain't the fountain of youth. But do you know how you live forever? I'll let y'all guess. I'll give you a minute to think about it. Anybody know? Don't die? Yeah, I mean, technically, yeah. If you don't die, you would live forever. But how do you not die? You will be okay. I think this is the closest to it. That crab Rugon, is that how you say it? Ragon? Memories in the hearts and minds of others. That's how you live forever. You leave a mark so big on this world that you will never be forgotten. That's how you live forever in the hearts and minds of others. And Ozzy, that's why I say, Ozzy is forever, because he will be loved and missed. Even little kids are out there missing Ozzy and enjoyed Ozzy, right? So in the hearts and minds of others, you will live forever. Your music will never die. He made a mark on the world that we could just hope to do something as cool as he did, to make a mark as big as he made. I know I haven't. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think I ever will, because Ozzy, he's a hard act to follow, okay? For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, to whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. John 3:16. Absolutely, right? I mean, I'm talking about on this planet, right? In this realm. How do you live forever in the hearts and minds of others? I hope, Dolly, you're a good guy. I'm okay, right? I ain't no saint, but I ain't no shitty person either. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm somewhere kind of in the middle of that. I always say I'm all right. Okay, I ain't great, but I ain't bad, but I ain't overly good. So I have my flaws and I F up every now and then, but I think I'm an okay person, and I'm trying to be a better person. I'm human, yeah, right, and I have my flaws and I make my mistakes just like anybody else. But I think I'm a decent guy, right? Decent. That's the thing. I don't. Good morning, Dolly. Color black, but I just rewind it that way. I won't miss anything. Okay. Well, let me put a little.
Inventing the genre, if you like, as well. After one critic described their sound as pieces of heavy metal banging together, it was a sound that took off, and which many artists over the years have cited Black Sabbath as being an integral influence over them today. But before the family, we think the family might be running a few minutes late. I was just going to try and lead you over here to get you to
Thank you, Jen.
Kirsty from the Birmingham Mail. Look, Kirsty, for Birmingham, this is a big deal today, isn't it?
It is. We've been following Ozzy Osbourne. He first started his band Black Sabbath here, and we've been covering Ozzy Osbourne for that whole time. We've had lovely photos of him when he was young, and it just means such a lot to the city of Birmingham that the son of the city is coming home to say goodbye. It really means a lot.
He spent so many years living out of this country, though, but he never lost touch of his roots over here, and it was always special for him to come back, wasn't it?
Totally. And I think what's more important than that, rather than just where he lived, he always spoke proudly of being from Birmingham. And I think what that means for people in Birmingham, especially like all the artists and musicians that are growing up here, they're inspired because they can see that better things could happen. You could end up in LA in some mansion somewhere, but the main thing is that Ozzy made sure to let them know that that's where they could be. And I think that inspiration is what has lifted us, whether he's on our doorstep or whether he's thousands of miles away.
Since news of his death broke, what's the sort of feeling been in the city?
It's been pretty dreadful, I think, because it's been a bit of a roller coaster. It started off such a high on July the 5th when we saw Back to the Beginning, exactly. And then for his death so soon after, it just felt really quite dreadful. But it was poignant because it felt like he did it on his own terms and he got to have this moment.
Yeah.
He got to do it with us, and now he's coming home, and that just means a lot.
We think of sort of the fan-artist relationship as it can be such a sort of intimate thing when you're listening to music and what have you, and it being very personal. But there've been like grown men weeping on the streets that I've seen today. It really is a sort of personal dynamic that he's had with a lot of his fans.
Totally. And heavy metal, this is the home of heavy metal, so it makes sense that we're here. But I've found, just as a fan of heavy metal, that we come together as a community. So many of my friends and the social spaces that I go, the people that I spend time with, my boyfriend, you know, he's a heavy metal fan. We met because we've got that shared joy of heavy metal, and heavy metal's ours. And so I think everyone is touched by Ozzy because he made it. And so all of these life stories that went on, that sparked from what those four men started, I just think is probably the reason why it feels so personal.
And it was, I believe the cortege is starting to make their way down. So I will.
Here we go.
Thank you so much for explaining that for us. We will just try to get our position back so that we can talk over the shots as they are coming. The family, as we said, they have been the ones that have been responsible for funding today. They're making sure that this could go ahead smoothly. It's been an important moment for them to come back and for Ozzy to be able to. They're not describing this as a sort of funeral procession. They want this to be one final tour for Ozzy of the city, is how they're putting it.
Here we go.
We can now see the cortege approaching down the street in the centre of Birmingham, and you can hear the strains of Boston brass. This is the musicians. These are the musicians that are accompanying the hearse as it makes its very, very slow procession down through the centre of the city. The family are there.
They're playing Ozzy.
A number of vehicles in there. Let's just pause and listen to this as it comes closer to us.
Iron Man. Horns up, Ozzy. Put your little bats in the chat room. Oh, it's glass. There's Ozzy. Wow. In the Jaguar hearse.
Well, you hear the crowds cheering and clapping as the hearse came by. The hearse itself, purple flowers on the top, the word Ozzy picked out and flowers on the side, and a single white hand-tied bunch of flowers at the back of the coffin. I'm joined in the studio by Paul Stokes, music journalist, and as we were listening to that cortege as it went past, Paul, Boston Brass, you reliably informed me they were playing Iron Man.
Yes, I think so, yeah. The Black Sabbath iconic song obviously had a second life in the film as well. So, I mean, just showing the reach, I think, of Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne.
I mean, this is a funeral. It's a desperately sad time to mark the passing of somebody, but it was clear that he was going to do this in a rock and roll fashion, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, being known as the Prince of Darkness, he was asked many times about what he wanted to happen when he went, and he was very adamant that when his funeral happened, it would be a celebration.
We're just going to pause because just to listen to the cheers. Paul, sorry, we cut you off in your prime there, just as the crowd was chanting Ozzy, Ozzy, Ozzy. And you were saying you're Prince of Darkness. You've been asked many times about how he'd like to be remembered.
And he wanted a celebration, which sounds like exactly what he's getting. He said, you know, many people have had bad times in their life. I don't want this, when I go, to be this sort of downbeat thing. I don't mind about the music, but just make sure people are you know, having a good time. He was talking about having pranks, so who knows what we might find later on in the day. But yeah, no, and I think, you know, as the report from the Birmingham Mail was saying, you can just hear the local pride. I mean, one thing I know, all the people I know, no matter what genre, who are from that region, who make music, Ozzy Osbourne is such an important figure for Birmingham and that area, because he, A, showed it was possible, but B, there are very few musicians who get to invent their own genres, and with Black Sabbath, that's exactly what he did and paved the way for heavy metal.
Well, exactly. You know, it is where the phrase heavy metal came from.
Mm.
Here from this point down to the Black Sabbath Bridge, and that's where a lot of people have gathered here today. We think it might pause there, the cortege.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just shows the many lives of Ozzy Osbourne, you know, rock icon, reality TV star, you know, the whole thing with Ozfest, which, you know, made him a huge player in terms of global live music, promoting young metal bands coming through, young rock bands. He's had that thing. And then also, the unique thing I think about Ozzy Osbourne is he is a true rock icon. He is the Prince of Darkness, but he also gave across this really approachable, down-to-earth sort of personality. And it was amazing that you could be, you know, like as we saw right at the end at Aston Villa, you know, be an icon, but also be this really approachable sort of guy. And I think that you can see people have responded to that today.
Let's listen to the band again as they come past.
They're getting out.
We were expecting that this might happen. The family, we think, are getting out here at the Black Sabbath Bridge to take a look at some of the flowers and the tributes that have been left to Ozzy Osbourne. Also, perhaps to engage with some of the crowd members who've come down here. I mean, the level of devotion from these fans, you can just hear it, can't you? And there, Sharon Osbourne, his wife, was his tour manager. Helped by her daughter, Kelly.
And Jack.
Son Jack also, and other daughter, Amy.
Oh, this is so sad.
The family taking some time to look at some of the tributes that are on the flowers, and also to be greeted and comforted by the mayor of Birmingham there also.
Amy, Kelly, Jack.
Clearly emotional, Sharon Osbourne there. Funeral difficult at the best of times, but this, compounded with the adulation from the crowds, must make it incredibly emotional.
The blonde-haired one is Kelly. That just got in the truck. That's Jack. There's Kelly.
And as the family get back into the procession of 6 vehicles following the hearse, let's bring back in Paul Stokes, music journalist, who's here with me. And Paul, I mean, gosh, really emotional watching those scenes, weren't they? They looked absolutely floored by the wave of love that came off the crowd.
Absolutely. I mean, we've sort of known Sharon Osbourne as this sort of smooth operator, this real sort of beast of the music industry. And so to see her sort of wounded like that is, yeah, very moving. But I mean, it was interesting because the crowd, it sort of feels like a cross between an away day, a royal walkabout and a solemn procession, which is kind of everything that Ozzy Osbourne sort of represents. It's brilliant.
Well, we're talking about the children that came out of the hearse, and they are, all of them, you know, we know them all because of that reality TV show, which is another element to his extraordinary legacy. It sort of created the genre of reality TV, didn't it?
Absolutely. The Osbournes are 25 years old this year, and you think...
Gosh, I can't believe it's that long.
I know, and it was like everyone in the world was watching it. I remember when we were sort of covering the programme, it was always like, can you get Jack on? Can you get Sharon? Can you get Ozzy? Who? And when people sort of announced it was going to happen, it was like, who cares? It's like, but the guy used to be in Black Sabbath, and it just absolutely not only transformed reality TV, but you know, the reinvigoration around Ozzy as this global icon is absolutely amazing. All by just being himself and swearing a lot and being annoyed at dogs for a lot of the time, it seemed. I mean, it was so true to him.
It also means for those of us who maybe don't know much about Black Sabbath or aren't Black Sabbath fans, we feel a connection with the family because we've sort of watched those kids growing up, haven't we?
Absolutely, and it was held by him being himself. Yes, there was no like, I've got to pretend to be this amazing rock star, you know, 24/7. He really let his true personality come across in that program. I think that, you know, that's why it worked. And then just seeing his children's reaction to, you know, having this sort of iconic yet slightly embarrassing dad on camera, it was a, you know, really, really warm program. It really kind of, you know, obviously, you know, it made them huge stars and there were sort of consequences because of that. But there was a real warmth to the Osbournes, and it wasn't sort of reality TV in its sort of more exploitative mode. It was a real sort of window on this sort of unique personality in his family.
We're talking about his personality. You interviewed him about 5 years ago. What was he like?
Oh, it was amazing. Everything you want him to be. I mean, like I say, he was an icon, but he was also incredibly down to earth. It was for Q magazine, and they used to have this back page where you don't have to ask silly questions. And one of them was like, when was the last time you did something? So I had to ask Ozzy, when was the last time you bit the head off a bat? Because obviously it's the famous or popular story. And the phone line went dead. And I was like, oh my God, I've offended. I didn't know it was possible. I've offended Ozzy Osbourne. What am I going to do? And I was thinking, well, I could end the piece there. Anyway, the phone goes about 5 minutes later. Ozzy, sorry, I was pressing this button to shut the window and it pressed it and cut you off. What were you saying? And I said, oh, and I asked the question again. He went, that's a really stupid question. Next. It was lovely. It was absolutely brilliant.
We've talked about the fact that he was this icon of Birmingham. It looked to me actually like one of the members of Duran Duran looked like they were in that shot there. It may have just been a family member with rather large hair, but Duran Duran are from Birmingham also, aren't they? So it's entirely possible. And they certainly wrote on Instagram a tribute to him after he died, saying, Ozzy was a cat who had way more than 9 lives. Thanks for the ride, Ozzy. Love from the other Brummies. He brought so much joy, humour and raw power to the world in a life of many chapters, and that first chapter was the music, of course, and we slightly overlook at the band there. They are playing his music, they're playing Black Sabbath music, but what kind of musician was he? How did he change music?
Well, I mean, he started off more on the sort of rhythm and blues side at the end of the 60s, and he was in various bands at a time when, you know, you could have lots of, you could be in one band and it could break up in the next band, and slowly but surely the sort of nucleus of Black Sabbath came together. And it was only with those sort of 4 personalities and just sort of tapping into a slightly darker thing. I think one of them was reading a book on the occult and had a really bad dream, which led to the song Black Sabbath, which obviously then gave the band the name and this kind of, you know, the album and everything like that. And I think, you know, what they just found they tapped into was by taking that bluesier sound and making it more dirgy, more darker, louder. I mean, that's the key. I mean, I think when people think of heavy metal, they think of this sort of huge amount of noise, but actually at the core of heavy metal there is this amazing sort of melodies and tunes, and almost sometimes going back to folk music, sometimes the way that their songs are picked out, and a lot of that comes back just to Ozzy Osbourne because of, you know, his love of melody. He's a massive Beatles fan, and that really sort of translated into then the kind of, although it was darker, although it was heavier, there are beautiful melodies in the middle of Black Sabbath, and I think, you know, Ozzy is a huge part of that, along with obviously Tsunami and his unique guitar playing style and the rest of the band.
Yeah, I heard Rick Wakeman on the radio this morning, and he was talking about that and how it was mainly chords before Ozzy Osbourne came along and Black Sabbath came along, and that it did really sort of pivot the whole genre.
Absolutely, and it made a new genre. I mean, because it was sort of rock music was going one way and had very sort of tradition coming out of blues, and heavy metal, and particularly where it expanded in the 70s and 80s. You know, it's this complete divergent path from where rock was up to that point, and is effectively a genre in its own right, and a massively, it's a brilliant genre, and it's massively huge, but it's kind of genre that, apart from like the Kerrangs of this world, none of music critics like me don't tend to be like, you know, they can be quite dismissive, and you look at some of the reviews they got at the time. As people come to heavy metal, it is a community. People, no one tells you to like it. The people that love it absolutely adore it, and I think that's a big part of the outpouring today. That sort of community, they treasure their heroes, you know, no matter how young or old they are. I was really always moved when I covered Kerrang, and Ozzy would be as important to them as it would me to say when I was working in more trendier magazines, and we'd be all about the person of the day. Ozzy was always an icon in that community of music.
Yeah, so cool that he didn't have to be on any bandwagon. He was just himself, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Let's return to Katie, who was down there amongst the crowds. Katie Spencer, our arts and entertainment correspondent. Katie, we're just looking at these images of the huge mass of flowers that have been left there. And as we looked at those pictures of the hearse just there, Katie, flowers on the front of the hearse as well that have been thrown by people in the crowd throughout the course of this procession. What does it feel like to be down there on the ground?
What an emotional moment. We journalists are used to sort of being quite hardened in these scenarios, and yeah, I just have to say a lot of us were in absolute tears just watching that. I'm joined now again by Kirsty Bosley from the Birmingham Mail. That was so emotional, wasn't it, Kirsty?
Dreadful, honestly. It was so sad. Sharon is normally so, and she's known as being like this hardest woman in metal, and it was just so sad to see her looking so frail.
And I think the family lasted here as long as they could, really. It's only a week since the news of his death broke, so it must be hugely sort of emotional to try and come to terms with it.
Definitely, you know.
All right, guys, that was the procession for Ozzy Osbourne. Now, look, I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back later this afternoon with all your news and updates. And tonight, of course, we'll be doing true crime. Just because I'm doing news during the day and late night, still my regular show is going to be straight true crime call in. So make sure y'all tune in later. What a sad day. I mean, that was completely heart wrenching. You know, when we started, I was on the Tsunami and everything was good, and people survived, and we got to end it with something pretty heartbreaking. So rest in peace to Ozzy Osbourne. He brought a lot of great memories to a lot of people, and he will be missed. Okay, you guys are great, and remember, if nobody else does, Dolly loves you. Peace.